Good day. It is March 1st, 2023. Happy hump day and welcome to the Cory Morgan Show. This is my weekly appearance where I'll rant, rave, cover some stories, cover some issues. And then when you get sick of listening to me, we'll always get some interesting guests to come on and speak to us about some of the other things as well. In a little while, I'm going to have Professor Frances Widdowson coming on. She was shouted down, I'm sure, as you saw in the news, and University of Lethbridge, and she's also just been chased around as an academic for having, of course, views contrary to what the establishment feels they should have. And it's a very, very troublesome and dangerous trend. If we can't have open critical discourse in our universities, where can we? And this is getting right out of control. So I'm looking forward to that. Of course, we'll be checking in with Dave Naylor and doing a lot of other things. So it's good to see you guys checking in. As you're all logging in, I'll give you a moment. Good to see you there, Jackie. Reminder, the show is live. Use that comment, scroll, get in there, get questions to myself, to my guests, chat with each other. Just try to keep it civil. Of course, we don't all have to be fighting with each other on there. Save that for Twitter. That's what that place is for. I quite enjoy fighting there, but we've only got an hour together here, so we can only be at each other's throats so much. So good to see you all checking in. Sean, Pat, Lori, Patricia, Stone Lee. Now I'm going to start with my usual ranting, and of course there was a lot to give it to me with this whole Chinese election interference issue going on. I mean, it's just something else. So somewhere in the depths of Canada's top security and intelligence agency, there's a hero who's been slowly leaking CSIS documents showing just how tightly tied the Chinese Communist Party has been with the Trudeau Liberal Party. And the picture is alarming, to say the least. And the most recent revelation exposed how the CCP had begun working to influence Justin Trudeau all the way back in 2013, when he won the Liberal leadership. In 2014, CSIS, our intelligence service, captured a conversation between an attaché from a Chinese consulate and Chinese billionaire Zhang Bin. Zhang was instructed to donate $1 million to the Trudeau Foundation and was told the Chinese government would reimburse him for the contribution. In 2016, $1 million was donated to the Trudeau Foundation by another pair of Chinese businessmen. That leaked out some years ago. I mean, the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation has done some great charitable work with things such as the erection of a $50,000 bronze statue of Pierre Trudeau in Montreal, so you can understand why the cause is important. We can't really be sure exactly what the Trudeau Foundation does, though, because Prime Minister Justin Trudeau suspended audits of charities for their political activities back in 2017 for some reason. What we do know, though, is Foundation's fundraising has exploded since Justin Trudeau became the Prime Minister. We also know that from the We Charity scandal that Justin Trudeau has difficulty separating charitable actions with things that benefit his personal family members. So yes, if you wanted to buy Justin Trudeau's love, pumping money into the Trudeau Foundation is a surefire way to do it. And the CCP, I mean, they control the world's most powerful rogue government right now. They've been focused on spying upon and influencing democratic governments around the world for decades. I mean, it's just what they do. So why is the Chinese Communist Party so obsessed with influencing Justin Trudeau? Well, let's face it. I mean, Justin Trudeau is the most pliant and least cerebral prime minister in Canadian history. The Chinese government doesn't want a prime minister as a deep-thinking self-starter. They wanted a vacuous, self-absorbed man who would ignore items of depth such as national security. So Trudeau is the ideal patsy. He spent nearly a decade now as a prime minister virtue signaling and showing off cute socks while Canada loses influence on the world stage. The Chinese leadership happily dubbed Trudeau the little potato when they first met him. He's hardly commanded their respect. I mean, Trudeau got spanked publicly by the leader of China recently at a summit. With a witless and distracted prime minister in power, the CCP could really get to work on controlling Canada's democratic institutions. It looks like they've been doing it through election influence. Han Dong has been exposed as a witting participant in the rigging of his Liberal Party nomination. We found this out through a CSIS leak. It was a gross and direct influence upon Canada's a Canadian elected official. Dong remains an MP today, and Trudeau has pretty much told the media that anybody criticizing Dong, well, is participating in racism. Now, Dong is just one of 11 Toronto area MPs who are influenced by the CCP efforts. With Dong, we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg. And Trudeau, he was informed of this, or at least his top staffers were. CSIS has notes of that. They let them know back then, and the Prime Minister's office chose to do nothing about it. Now, this Chinese election influence story has been going on for years. It's just coming to a head right now. In response to the problem, the Trudeau Liberals assigned a man named Morris Rosenberg to investigate it. Rosenberg was the by the way, the head of the Trudeau Foundation during the time the Chinese donations were coming in. And guess what? When he looked into the 2019 and 2021 elections, he found no impropriety. What a shock. The CBC, of course, that's the only story they've reported on this whole issue, it seems, is how Rosenberg found no interference from the Chinese Communist Party. Yes, the man who headed the Trudeau Foundation found out and has reported that apparently the Trudeaus have done nothing wrong. Trudeau still refuses to allow any kind of independent inquiry into the issue. He's claiming Rosenberg, his report covers the issue well enough, and further investigation can be carried out by a nice liberal-dominated committee if we need to. Not only that, but anybody questioning that course of action is surely a racist. Trudeau has also noted he wants to find out who the whistleblower is. Yeah, he really wants to find that out. He doesn't seem terribly concerned that the nation's democratic integrity has been breached, but he sure wants to catch and punish whoever spilled the beans. Whoever the person leaking the CCP influence documents from within the CSIS is, they appear to be trying to actually do it as little as they have to. They released the information on Dong and the still unnamed 10 candidates initially and then stopped there. But when Trudeau refused to act, then the information on the attempts to influence the Trudeau Foundation were leaked. With Trudeau still refusing to take action, I got a feeling we're going to see more documents coming out soon. Whoever's been leaking the CSIS information isn't a treasonous villain, even though some liberal fart catchers online are trying to claim it such. This person is a patriotic hero. They clearly tried to deal with things through the proper channels years ago, but they hit a brick wall with the Trudeau government. Now they're bypassing that wall for the sake of all Canadians. So whenever this story is done and settled, I do hope the identity of the person leaking the documents is eventually exposed. And not so they can be punished, but so they can be given the Order of Canada, because whoever it is a true Canadian hero. That's what's got me wound up today, guys. I mean, really, it just, I think I can't be surprised anymore. I'm as cynical as they get, but still, really, to the point of a foreign rogue authoritarian government directly meddling in our election and our prime minister is refusing to act. And you know what? I think he might get away with it. This is Canada. I mean, Trudeau skated on multiple blackface wearing. He skated on the We charity scandal. He skated on the SNC Lavalin. I don't know what it takes. I don't know what it'll take to break that love affair of Central Canada with Trudeau. I mean, if his abiding by Chinese influence on our elections isn't enough to do it, I weep for what's left of this nation. All right, well, let's check on some other news, see what else is happening. It has been a busy week. Let's bring in our news editor, Dave Naylor, and get the rundown on what else is going on out there in the big bad world. Hey, Dave, how's it going?
Not bad, Cory, though I must say I'm very disappointed in you.
What did I do this time?
Well, it's my special day today. It's St. David's Day.
St. David's
I know it's not as widely celebrated as St. Patrick's Day, but St. David's Day is still pretty important, and you've just ignored me.
Well, maybe in post I'll get Nico to put a beatific halo above you for the recorded version of this, and we can recognize your saintlyhood or your patron for future views.
That's right. I think I was named after the patron saint of Wales, St. David, and to celebrate, Nigel and I are going out on the town tonight to have some Welsh rarebit, I think.
Oh, well, right on. Don't celebrate too hard. There's still more news to cover tomorrow.
I suppose. And yeah, you're right, Cory. What a news week it's been already with the Chinese story dominating the political spectrum. Leading off on our website right now is a column by somebody you'll be familiar with, one Cory Morgan, and it's basically just your written rant for the readers to enjoy it. We've also got an Angus Reid poll up showing the fact that most Canadians, including the majority of Liberal voters, think that China did interfere. And we've also got that story up on the $1 million donation to the Trudeau Fund by China, but as long as they used it to build a statue of Mao at the University of Montreal. So, lots of stuff, and we'll keep on top of that one. Other stuff, we've got lots of fallout from yesterday's Alberta budget. Our energy expert, Sean Polzer, weighs in with what he thinks of the budgeted price that they're thinking oil is going to be, and he says it's finally realistic. At the budget yesterday, an interested spectator was one Tamara Litch of Freedom Convoy fame. She was invited to view the budget by independent LA bars. So Arthur Green and correspondent got the story up there. And interesting story from the treasurer, Travis Daves, who yesterday said the chances of a Alberta provincial police force are now, quote, off the table, unquote. So we've got some fallout coming on that, and whether or not Mr. Taves may have spoken a bit too prematurely, ruling out an Alberta police force. So lots up and lots to come. A busy day as usual, Cory.
Right on. Well, I'll let you get up there to editing and posting more of those stories so you, Nigel, can prepare for your St. David's Bender this evening then. Thanks, Dave.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. So don't forget to send him your best St. David's Day greeting card or whatever that might be. I haven't seen them at the Hallmark shop, but admittedly, I've never looked for them. So this is the time I'd like to remind everybody to. The reason we're independent, the reason we can report on these things, as I put it out, the state broadcaster, the CBC, isn't touching these stories, is they're beholden to the government. We aren't. We don't take tax dollars. We won't take a nickel from the government, but we do rely on you guys. We rely on subscriptions. And I know it frustrates folks when that paywall comes up, but it makes it possible, you know. And for $10 a month, $99 for a year. I mean, we used to pay it for newspaper subscriptions to get delivered to our door and never thought twice about it. That way you can get a subscription, get past all the paywalls, get direct access to everything there, guys, and support us so we can keep covering these stories that the legacy media won't do. So for you guys who've already subscribed, and I know most of you watching already have, thank you very much. And if you haven't yet, get on there and subscribe, guys. This is how we beat the establishment. This is how we bypass those attempts to control information, control the media, and get away from the legacy media that unfortunately has just become hopelessly corrupted in the sense of their dependence on government funding to keep operating. So before I get to my guest, I'll look a little more into this. One of the stories that came up, so that Morris Rosenberg, I mean, it boggles the mind. This was the CEO of the Trudeau Foundation. I mean, you don't have to be a detective to see the conflict of interest here. I mean, the name is right in the foundation. Don't take this person and get them in charge of examining something if you want their report to have any credibility. Perhaps what Mr. Rosenberg put out was perfectly accurate. Perhaps he did do an in-depth investigation. We'll never believe it. Come on. I mean, who's he going to get to proof and check this report for Mr. Rosenberg? Margaret Trudeau, she hasn't been doing much lately. I mean, she's not making the money from the We Foundation speaking engagements that she used to. So maybe Margaret can get on the job, and that'll settle things and we won't have to talk about it. But this is how absurd it's getting. I mean, the other big disappointment, again, I shouldn't allow myself to be disappointed out of this, I guess, but is Jagmeet Singh. I mean, he is holding this government up. He's the one. Trudeau can't do anything without Singh's compliance, without Singh supporting him on those votes. And Singh talks tough, but he's a tied up little chihuahua of Trudeau's. He talks big, but he won't move. He can take down this government anytime he wants. But he's as close to power as he ever will be as an NDP leader. That's why he talks tough but backs down every time. Now we have evidence of direct interference in our electoral process. People, it can't be overstated how vital this is, how important this is. If we lose faith in our democratic institution, this country is in serious, serious trouble. I mean, the only hope you really have in a democracy, that at least you can get out and cast your ballot, and theoretically and hopefully in the knowledge that you've made your one-person impact on that election and had your say. And then you got to sit and take it for anywhere from a year to 5 years under the Westminster parliamentary system. But if even that process is corrupted, then you aren't in a democracy anymore. It's as simple as that. That's the absolute truth. And some of these people trying to lowball. There was one guy actually tweeted at me, said, just report accurately, Cory. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. It was only 11 Toronto MPs that were impacted. Whoa. I don't care if it was only one. Do you not understand the gravity of this issue? The importance of this? I mean, part of what they're also saying and trying to put out there is that, well, we don't see evidence that it really turned the course of the election. You know, sure, it was only a handful of MPs, but there was enough of a win by Trudeau that didn't make a difference. It's the principle, guys. It doesn't matter whether they did manage to turn the course of the election or not. They tried, and they're being allowed to get away with it. And it sounds like the Prime Minister's office might be complicit. You can't just brush this under the rug, or people are trying, and they might get away with it. I don't know. I'm losing so much faith myself, and not so much in the institution. I'm losing my faith in Canadians. I mean, it's the apathy that allows this. What does it take to get you guys mad enough to change something? How blatant does the corruption, does the underhandedness have to get before you decide, you know what, maybe I might change my vote, or maybe I might speak up? Or even, as a liberal, I mean, can you not be horrified when your own party leader has strayed? I mean, I tell you what, that's what adds to my cynicism. I mean, yeah, there's political parties of all stripes have had corruption issues and improprieties and a lot of things. And it infuriates me 10 times as much when it's one of the ones on what I would consider my own team who do it than when it's the other guys, because I expect it of them. So there's got to be some silently furious liberals. Well, stop being silent, guys. I mean, you can still hold on hope that the liberals remain in power. Just get rid of that hammerhead you've got for a leader. I mean, this is getting beyond the pale. And maybe with a new, less corrupted liberal leader, you could win an election and still remain in power, as it feels interminable as it is. But to sit back and do nothing, it is our fault as apathetic Canadians. I mean, we allow this. In the end, we do. We push back against the wrong things, and we accept the wrong things. Speaking of pushback, so where do we see people getting off their butts? I'm going to segue a little bit here before I go to an ad and get to my guest. We get upset snowflakes who are fearful that somebody might say things they don't want to hear, say things that contradict their vision of things. So then they got off their butts, and we're going to scream and shout that person down. We're going to stop that discourse. We don't want to hear it. Our tender ears cannot hear it. It's not enough for me just to leave the room then and let it happen. We have to stop it. We have to stop these people from even talking about what I don't like. Yeah, Canadians, at least some degree, get off their butts and do something, but it's for all the wrong reasons. And it's having a very negative impact on a lot of things. So that's what happened down in University of Lethbridge a few weeks ago. And I'm going to talk to Professor Widdowson about that. Before then, I will run a quick ad. We pay our bills as well, not just through you guys subscribing, but through some great sponsors. So have a watch at this, and then I will have a discussion with Professor Widdowson on what's going on.
Canadian Shooting Sports Association. Without the CSSA, our gun rights would have been taken long ago. These guys are on the front lines helping to draft smart and intelligent firearms regulations and legislation in Canada, and more importantly, educating the public about how we keep guns out of the hands of the wrong people. To become a member, it's absolutely worth every penny.
Okay, hello, Professor Widdowson. Welcome back to the show. I appreciate you coming on to talk to us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Great, and I did have you on before. I think it was last year at some point. What we had spoken of, maybe just to give a recap, because not all of our audience members might be familiar with the history of it, but you had been instructing for some time at Mount Royal University, and basically they violated the principles of tenure, and you got removed from there. Can you kind of give a little background on what happened there?
Yes, so I originally, up until 2020, was just asking questions about various what is considered to be woke areas, which is identity politics that has become totalitarian in the university. This was disliked by a whole bunch of people. And then with the George Floyd killing and Wendy Mesley's being kicked out of the CBC, or she wasn't fired, but she was pretty much removed from things for mentioning the title of Pierre Valiere's book, White Niggers of America. I defended her, and then a mob went after me, about 40 professors. And because of Mount Royal's changing of its policies around social media, which it didn't let anyone know about, they basically used that change in policy to have me removed from Mount Royal University.
Yeah, and I mean, it's to not even be able to speak to these things, because, for example, I mean, the Wendy Mesley example you're speaking of is an interesting one, because this is a very progressive person. This was a person who's been well established at the CBC for a long time, a long career, very much a progressive, certainly no indications of racism. But she'd mentioned a book by title, which has, it's an offensive word. I can't stand that word, but it's context. You're mentioning the title of a book in preparation for a show. And that was all it took to completely destroy a career that spanned decades, because context doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, and the fact that no one defended her, and the fact that I defended her and then got basically taken out for defending her, just shows you the madness that is happening, especially at a university where referring to book titles is something that we have to do. And I myself have done research on Quebec nationalism and have used that book title. So what am I supposed to do? I'm not supposed to be referring to that book title. I just don't understand where all this is going. So that's the kind of self-censorship and fear that is permeating throughout universities that we need to push back hard right now, before they start to put people in jail for putting forward ideas that are considered to be quote unquote incorrect.
Well, that's it. And universities, I mean, they traditionally, they reformed. I mean, it was supposed to be a place where you're going to have critical discourse. You're going to have discussion. People don't have to agree. A professor might truly be haywire and offensive and off the rails. Oh, well, that's the way it goes. Debate it. Move on. Don't go to that professor's courses. But you've got to protect it. I mean, it was considered extreme for professors to talk about racial integration in schools in the United States back in the 40s and 50s. They were risking their careers by coming out in favor of it. Thankfully, there were protections so they could push for that, and we got better. But now we've got a groupthink mentality, and it's chilling any kind of discourse.
Yes, and there's just a report that came out of the United States now, and they're finding that professors are censoring more now than they were during the McCarthy era. So things are really going off the rails. And it's not just Mount Royal University. You know, people might want to focus on that, but that's really not the situation. We have problems all across the country. And it is due to the fact that the academic character of universities and the acceptance of the idea that you should be able to discuss all ideas at a university has now been completely usurped by this idea that if you say something that is hurtful to a member of a particular group, that should not be allowed, because that's somehow making the university unsafe for those groups and is excluding them from the university, when in fact it's actually excluding them from the university to not enable them to become part of the conversation to try to determine many of the serious problems that are facing Indigenous people, for example, or trans activists, or whatever the group might happen to be that's being protected.
Well, yeah, so getting to the more recent incident, you were invited by another professor of philosophy. Again, this is talking, about an area of academia where you should be expanding thought and discussing things. You were there invited to speak, and word got out of it, and a haywire mob essentially shut you down.
Yeah, that was quite a shocker. I'm used to these incidents happening, and often they're quite comical. And then to have to step out of the elevator and to see this large public space just filled to the rafters with hundreds of people brandishing signs, saying, no place for hate or racism, free speech is not hate speech, all these sorts of things. Which, okay, students like to blow off steam. We understand that it's often a big part of universities, but that's not really the problem. It's not really the students that I think are the problem here. The problem is the administrators and the faculty. There are serious problems now with the faculty not thinking that ideas can be discussed. A number of professors at the University of Lethbridge actively supported the students. The history professor held a talk at the exact same time that my talk was going to be given right from the beginning. And as well, the faculty association. That is something that people should really take an interest in, because it's the faculty associations that defend professors' academic freedom and freedom of expression. This faculty association, which is just horrendous, the University of Lethbridge Faculty Association, expressed concern about hurtful speech on my part and the need to protect students and faculty from my speech. We are going to pursue this faculty association, and we are going to file a grievance that Paul Viminitz's academic freedom was violated by the University of Lethbridge. That faculty association should be taking forward that grievance and fighting hard against the university, but of course they're very unlikely to do so because they are actually responsible for the terrible situation that exists at the University of Lethbridge.
Well, and of all associations, you think an association of academia would understand the dangers of appeasing a mob. Throwing one to the mob, and it's like the old statement of appeasement. Eventually, they're going to come for you. I mean, your own freedoms. You're going to say something. You're going to study something that some group or individual or such is going to say is offensive. I don't want to hear it, and you're going to be thrown under the bus. And you set the precedent to allow that to happen. Like the danger of this is immense. And what is the point of a faculty association if they won't stand up for faculty?
Well, they stand up for some faculty, the faculty whose views they agree with, and they don't stand up for faculty whose views they don't agree with. And this is totally goes against the duty of fair representation. It's a massive failure of the labor relations framework in Alberta. And this has really got to be one of the major targets right now, and trying to get the faculty associations to actually uphold their duty of fair representation and defend all faculty members and accept the idea that it's important to discuss ideas, even if some people get upset by hearing those ideas, because it's not just about freedom of expression. Everyone thinks about freedom of expression and your ability to speak your mind. It's also about the ability of people to hear. So people at a university should be able to hear different views, evaluate those views, and determine whether those views have merit or not. They shouldn't have a group of activists making a predetermined decision about what ideas can and cannot be heard. And that is a huge problem now in all universities across the country.
Yeah, and the other element you mentioned was the faculty and the cowardice on their part. And we've seen that happen in a lot of universities in Canada, as well as in Europe. We've seen it in the United States. When there's protests, they always use the safety card. Oh, we're not doing it to shut down speech, but it just seems like things might not be safe, even for the speaker, so we'll do it on your behalf. Even if the speaker says, I'm fine. Oh, no, we better stop. It's cowardice on their part. Though, I mean, some of those mobs are pretty aggressive, but I mean, that shouldn't be tolerated. Capitulating to threats of violence isn't the way to deal with it. Then up security if that's the case, or limit admission for people coming to these events. But faculty just much prefers to shut the event down altogether.
Well, that was the funny thing about the University of Lethbridge, because I've been involved at talks at places like Wilfrid Laurier University, where there actually was kind of threats that were being made. And so they blew that up into, oh, well, we've got to have all this huge security fencing and all these sorts of things. But at the case of the University of Lethbridge, it was made very clear by the protesters that they were going to be nonviolent. So that wasn't even part of the calculus that happened with respect to the president canceling the talk. He explicitly stated that the talk was being canceled, not because of physical safety concerns, but because of psychological safety concerns. And the fact that certain students felt that they would be harmed by hearing words with which they disagreed. And this did a huge for the president. And then not only did the president cancel the talk, after I tried to go to the university and make a speech in a public place, just because I wanted to push back against being, not being allowed to come on campus to give a talk. I didn't want to not be allowed to go there. Then there's this huge crowd that shouted me down. What does the president do? He sends out a message the next day congratulating the students and faculty members for what they did. What kind of message does that send from an academic leader, a supposed academic leader, who is having that attitude that it is acceptable for a small group, a relatively small group of activists, because there were people there who wanted to listen to me speak, for them to be able to have that power to shut down views with which they disagree. It's just completely shocking.
Well, and so, I mean, a few years ago, there was a professor, he might still be at the University of Lethbridge, it just popped into my head, his name escapes me, but he was an avowed Marxist. He used to annoy the heck out of me. I mean, he was very controversial in my view and belligerent and offensive in his views. He would soft pedal even things such as the actions of Stalin and the people he harmed. And I couldn't stand that. But it never occurred to me for a second that he should be fired or shut down or kicked out of the university. It's just that we should debate this man and lay out why his views are wrong and odious. But the mindset has changed now. And what does it take, or what can we do, I guess is the question. I mean, it seems we've got a whole generation of snowflake students coming up that have been taught that if you have a temper tantrum, you don't have to hear anything that might offend your ears. Can we change this tide now, though?
It's going to be very difficult. And it's kind of funny because I actually am a socialist myself. I'm not. So I do have a very critical view of capitalism, but it's, people disagree with me, and that's fine. And in fact, it's good for people to hear, if you're not a socialist, what the socialist position is, so that you can more fully understand it. This is a huge battle now. Many of my colleagues say it's over. We're not going to be able to save the university. I have a more optimistic type of view myself. I think what is required is serious organization. So we need to have organization at the university level, at the national level, and at the international level, and somehow work to get all these entities kind of acting together. I am a board member for an organization called the Society for Academic Freedom and Scholarship, www.safs.ca. And what we want to do in that organization is organize local chapters for each university. And that's the kind of on the ground type of organizing work that has to be done, so that you can introduce faculty members to other faculty members who want to protect the academic character of the university. You can bring the students in who are interested in this. You can bring in interested members of the public. So it's not very glamorous work to be doing that, but it's really the only hope, I think, is to act in that way. And that's what I'm going to be devoting the rest of my life to, I think, is to try to save universities. People don't realize how important universities are in terms of being a bulwark against these autocratic types of intrusions. If we lose our universities, we are going to have serious problems in terms of these sort of totalitarian impulses that we see already that are trying to assert themselves in Canadian society.
Well, that's it, because the graduates of these universities are going to be moving into senior academic positions, senior bureaucratic positions in the country. They're going to be the regulators. They're going to be the ones that are managing a lot of aspects of our lives very soon. And we would like to think that they have some good, broad and tolerant views. But if they've been instilled with such an attitude of entitlement and closed-mindedness as we're seeing right now, we could be seeing a lot of much bigger trouble in 10 to 20 years.
Yes, and one of the big areas which really scares me is the legal profession, because we rely on our courts to uphold principles such as the rule of law and equality under the law. Wokeism is completely opposed to that and has the idea of this intersectional scale of oppression. And if you are a member of an oppressed group, somehow the law should treat you differently than other people. And this is starting to infuse itself into the legal profession now. So I'm very, very worried that in not too long in the future, we will see these fundamental principles of the legal system being overturned by wokeism. And in fact, it's not far off. We had the Ward decision, which was successful, upheld freedom of expression, but I believe it was 5-4 was the decision. And that could have you need one more Supreme Court justice who starts to develop these kinds of woke ideas, totalitarian identity politics. And that decision is going to be overturned, and we aren't going to have freedom of expression rights anymore. As well, a very, very important example just happened. Leah Gazan, the NDP MP, wants to criminalize saying that the residential schools are not genocidal. This is a major area of contention amongst historians, amongst many academics. For her to be saying that you should criminalize and put in jail people who have a dissenting position on this is just absolutely outrageous. And the fact that it's being accepted and there's not a huge outpouring of opposition is an indication of how close we are to having complete, autocratic types of processes take over our society.
Yeah, well, our elected officials, even the ones who have trouble with it, are afraid of that trap. And that's what it is a trap. Because if you speak against it, you're saying, oh, so you're trying to say the residential schools were good. Or you're of course, the racist word is almost immediately thrown out if somebody questions it. And often they're just too scared to take on that battle, so they let it slide by. But when you have a legal precedent that would legally shut down discourse on something that's definitely still very much in the investigative point of establishing in history, boy, that's a river we don't want to cross.
It's true, and even if it's an idea that's wrong, like you should be entitled to be wrong, because that's how we figure things out. If you don't want to utter something for fear that it's wrong and therefore it's not going to be allowed, then you will not be able to enter into that investigation and see, and it's possible there might be part of it that's right. All these kinds of very, very complex kinds of questions that need to be examined openly and without fear that you're going to be subjected to some kind of punishment just for trying to figure it out. And in the end, well, maybe it's incorrect, but, still you've learned something by being corrected, by trying to understand something more fully. So I think the universities and what's happening in the universities is permeating into all aspects of society. And I am very afraid for the future. It wasn't that long ago where universities were functioning properly. And really, it's only been in the last 5-10 years that we've had this takeover, and it's on the move. It's not going to stop where it is now. It needs people to really take it seriously and really to fight back against it.
And a couple of commenters, Terry French and Tom Abbott. I see the name, of course, Jordan Peterson has come up, and I think of others like Gad Saad, though he hasn't been canceled. He's been very critical of these things, but it's typically once they're outside the institution that they do that. But I mean, there is new platforms being given, I guess, to some outspoken people that are gaining some steam and bringing this into discussion. But do you think they can make change, or are they going to be taking part in this organization of trying for academia and supporting it?
I hope so. We have had Jordan Peterson and Gad Saad come and give talks at the Society for Academic Freedom and Scholarship. But it's difficult when you become a celebrity, because then it's easier just to go and talk to large crowds, which is I'm not trying to downplay that, because I think that's very important. And both Gad Saad and Jordan Peterson, I've learned a lot from them. I really enjoy listening to them. We disagree on a number of things, obviously, but there's nothing wrong with that. But I admire their principled defense of academic freedom and freedom of expression. But unfortunately, I think if it's going to be successful trying to pull our universities back, it's going to be doing the hard, task that is not very glamorous, as I said before, of going into each university and trying to find the people there who support these principles, and then giving them some kind of organizational support. Because that's very, very important for professors, is that if you stand up for the university and you're an individual, you will be taken out. There's no doubt about it. And these administrators, and you don't have your faculty association to protect you. So you need organization. You need serious help with, supporting you, giving you the resources that you need to fight back against it. That is the kind of work that has to be done. And I am currently, once I get through all my own, difficulties with Mount Royal University, I'm really looking forward to working much more in a hands-on fashion at the local university level, and trying to tie each of those universities in to the national organization that is in existence, and then the very, very good international organizations. I just mentioned FIRE, which is the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, I think, in the United States, the Free Speech Union in the United Kingdom. There's a number of organizations like this. But the problem is we're all kind of working sort of separately, when we need to kind of have this sort of networking type of approach where we tie everyone together so that we can act in a more kind of unified, organized fashion to try to save our universities, which are failing terribly. And anyone who doesn't think there's a problem is not paying attention to what's happening in universities. My case is very, very important. It's going through arbitration May, June, and I believe November and December of this year. And hopefully that case, and with my reinstatement, I'm fighting hard for reinstatement back into Mount Royal University. And if I'm not reinstated, universities are over, because I have done nothing wrong, and it's just a complete abuse of power by Mount Royal University, which has allowed this to happen.
Well, I certainly do hope that your challenge against Mount Royal is successful, and I really want your group to take off. I'll point people as well. You wrote a great extended piece in c2cjournal.ca. It's called Into Wokeism's Raging Maw. And for looking that up, guys, it's letter C, number 2, letter C. It makes it hard to Google it sometimes, journal.ca. But look it up. It's well worth a read, and you'll get a lot more background on what's going on with Professor Widdowson. And before I let you go, where else can people find information then on what you're working on?
Yes, so there's a website that's been developed about my case. It's called www.wokeacademy.info. There's an area there about my firing, which has, I believe it's 16 episodes about what went on there. As well, there's information that's posted onto the blog that's happened there. And I do a lot of posting now on my Facebook page as well. So there's a lot of information that I post on a daily basis on my Facebook page, which gives people a lot of information.
Great. Well, thank you again for coming on to talk to us today, and for keeping up the fight rather than just kind of giving up and going into retirement like so many do. I can understand the temptation for it. Okay. So I hope we can talk again soon, and perhaps be talking about a success on one level or another.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So that was Professor Frances Widdowson, guys. As I said, you can find her on C2C Journal with that article, and just Google her name and you'll see the activity. She's pushing back, and that's what I admire. As I said, I don't agree with her. Socialism, oh boy, we will have to have a separate discussion of that another time as well. But that's the thing, discuss it. Don't ban, don't cancel, don't shout down. And these are the people, these institutions that are raising the next generation. I was talking to somebody a little while back about what's going on with, say, for example, energy companies. Why are they being so weak-kneed when it comes to these environmentalists? You know, Shell and some of the others. They're terrible. I mean, they sound like they're run by, again, woke students. Well, that's because they're starting to be. The ones who came through those post-secondary institutions, graduated, climbed the corporate scrotum pole, got into these spots in these energy companies, and now this ESG garbage is coming out. They've lost sight of the role of a corporation, guys, is to earn profit and money. It's not a shameful thing. In fact, it's what you have to do. But this rot is getting in even on the board level with these large corporations, with these woke morons getting in there, thinking that no, we're supposed to be some sort of charitable organization benefiting the world. And of course, it's leading to some terrible outcomes in these companies too, guys. You don't make money campaigning against yourself, and that's what happens when, again, speaking of. When you talk about appeasement, you know, and trying to feed the tiger or crocodile hoping it eats you last. I mean, we look at these companies that fund oil companies that are giving money to groups like the Pembina Institute. Don't give the Pembina Institute money. They're anti-energy. They're not going to lay off you just because you fed them. That's the same as getting back to the cancel mobs in general. Don't apologize to them. Don't back down. They won't forgive you. They won't. Once they have you in their sights, they're unrelenting. So you might as well fight to the bitter end, and don't toss them bones. Don't give them money. But you know, how counterintuitive is it for you're an energy company and you think, I know what's a good idea. I'll give money to the groups that are trying to shut me down because that'll pacify them and make them okay. Well, did it? No, of course not. They're just fighting you all the harder. But this is the upside down, absurdist world we're in today. And a lot of that comes out from these sorts of initiatives. Roland, commenter there, saying oil companies are getting $20 billion in royalties that belong to Albertans paid off. I'm not sure what you're getting at exactly with it, Roland, but I mean, part of it is something I tweeted recently was, yeah, the budget, for example, was shored up to, you know, yesterday's budget by $18 billion in royalties. Now, progressives always saying, oh, the oil companies, they're just screwing us. They're taking all that out of the ground and they're leaving. And What do you think really happens with that? What do you think really happens when it comes to the point of needing energy and once they've done and extracted it and sold it? I mean, they explore, they employ people, they pay lease, in land sales, they pay lease rights, they pay landowners to do seismic projects, they, hire individuals, they stay in hotels, they stay in restaurants. All of those people are all paying income tax, paying GST, paying municipal taxes when they go in the area. And then the oil company gets in there and drills a well, and lo and behold, they did all right. They got a gusher, great. They bring it into production. They got to hire pipeliners, and they spend all that money, and they get it to the refinery, and eventually it gets into the gas tank of your car. Meanwhile, the governments at every level are taking little bites all the way through. And billions and billions and billions of dollars are going into the governments, federal, municipal, and provincial. And then it goes into your healthcare. That goes into your education. Or if it's the corporate profits, the evil corporate profits, where do you think it's going? Your pension plan. What do you think makes it grow? I mean, really, these imbeciles that think corporations shouldn't make any profit, that's fine. But are you content with an inflationary environment with the cost of living and everything going up to know that your pension, and I'm including even the CPP or private pension plans, to have zero growth? Because that's the only way they grow, kiddies. That's it. It's not magic. It's not unicorn shit that makes it happen. It's investment in corporations. And when those corporations issue dividends, when they have profits, that makes your pension grow. That's how you might be able to retire later. The unions sure are quiet on that. They love to leave their members in ignorance on how that works. And they want ever bigger and bigger pension plans. I tell you, you want to see one of the biggest areas of hypocrisy on earth? Look at the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan. That fund is worth, hundreds of billions of dollars? And good on them. Hey, you're putting your money in, you're saving it for retirement of your members. But they aren't green investors, guys. They own oil companies. And Roland said, no, you're wrong. Their pockets are being filled. How much profit? Theft is theft. Oh, kiss my ass, Roland. Okay, so you're going down the wrong track. Profit is not theft, Roland. If you want to try the non-profit system, go to Venezuela. They nationalized the oil there. There was no profits there. In fact, they still have the cheapest pump prices on earth. Nobody can afford a car, but damn, that gasoline's cheap. Ate our zoo animals, but we could drink gasoline. There's nothing wrong with profit, and it's not theft. If you don't like it, Roland, don't buy their products. See, that's not theft. You don't have to buy their stuff, do you? So, yeah, you want to grind down corporate profits, see how that works for you. And we see the same thing with all the people screeching and howling about Loblaws and Galen Weston and, the politics of envy. Look up the margins. Rather than looking at gross profit numbers, look at the margins. And the margins for it's not Sobeys, what was it? Loblaws, yeah, are under 4%, the profit margin. I mean, the number is record profits, yes, because of inflation and the numbers get bigger and bigger, but it's only a 4% margin. These companies sometimes lose money. Everybody's kind of quiet when that happens. Others point out, but the government gave them like $12 million for refrigeration that was unfair. Yeah, it was stupid. I don't agree with subsidies, but it doesn't mean I want to claim that this company is a part of a conspiracy to make the price of my pork chops go up. Have a look around. You don't have to go to Superstore. You can go to Walmart. Don't like Walmart, go to Safeway. Don't like Safeway, go to the corner store. Go to the farmer's market. Grow your own friggin' food. Just leave it competitive. You want to really screw it up? Get government involved in it. That's the way to screw it up every time. Speaking of government screwing things up, let's pivot here a little bit. So MPs have now voted, Commons Heritage Committee, we're going to summon executives from Google and put them on the carpet and demand, how dare you guys make an example by suddenly blocking people from news stories on your website? Because you see, C-18 is coming down the pipes, and not enough people are paying attention to that too. That's a government control bill. That's garbage. It's crap. And what it's doing is putting the screws to the social media giants. Sure, they're giants. They have to be, guys. I mean, they're big companies, but they want those companies to be forced to pay money to every media outlet well, not every media outlet. There's the catch, right? But pay money to media outlets when news stories come up on their searches, whether through Facebook and Google and things like that. Well, you can't, you can try. Why are you forcing it? But you see what happens then is they only pick certain companies that qualify. This is where the government gets back to the media control and a lot of things. See, if that bill goes through and they do it the way they like, organizations such as the Western Standard are going to be put at a terrible disadvantage all of a sudden, because we probably won't qualify for this little screw over of Google and Facebook where they would have to pay a few bucks to every media outlet, that they show a link to on their things. And we're very reliant on people finding us through Google. We're reliant on Facebook, people finding us through that. We've got tens of thousands of Facebook followers. Look, those companies aren't perfect by any means, but they're doing us a service. They're allowing people to find us, to find our stories, to subscribe to us, to find our advertisers. And if we don't have that access anymore, it's going to be really hard to get out to everybody. And the federal government thinks they can put the gun to the head of these companies and say, these are the ones you're going to promote, and we'll pay you a little bit. No, we'll make you pay them for promoting it. So Google said, screw you guys, we'll show you. We'll give you a taste of it. And they did. And the government's furious. They're furious. And they're pulling it before the carpet to say, we have to pull you in front of our committee and make you explain yourself. Why? Why? It's a private company. It doesn't have to be a company you like. I understand that. I don't want to start a whole long line of what Google suppressed or didn't in the past. Fine, use something else. Go to Bing. But who is the government to say you have to operate your business like this? Who is the government to say you have to give searches to this, that, or that? It's not their role. But this is how authoritarian and intrusive and dangerous and ugly our government is getting. They want to control information. C18, C11. They want to control, they want to stop people like me to be able to reach out and talk to people like you. That's the reality of it. They can choke YouTube, Google, Facebook, all of these things. But the arrogance, the way they're summoning the heads of Google to come in and speak to their committee. I hope Google tells them to go to hell and shuts down all news access for a while. Teach them a real lesson. That thing is just not right. Okay, Roland. Okay, let's go into it. Here's the old. I agree with profits, but greed is wrong. Who's getting the profits? But the heads. The rest of the middle class won't work or won't gain anything. Okay, Roland, you weren't listening to me. It's not the heads who are making the profit. It's everybody who has a pension plan. Look it up. Look it up. Where do you think the pension plans grow? Who do you think owns the shares in these companies? It's not greed. And the rest of the middle class worker won't gain? Really? That's who are relying on pensions, guys. They don't have the $1 million mansions to retire into later on. They're relying on the pensions, and those pensions are investing in these companies. And people like him, no, think, well, it's greedy. We shouldn't allow those companies to profit. Look up the economics a little harder, guys, or you're shooting yourself in the balls, and it's going to cost you, not others. You know, the politics of envy. Don't use the greed word. Greed. Who's being greedy? I want to take their profits away from them because they're greedy. Listen to yourself. You're trying to steal somebody else's asset. You're the greedy one. Work harder. Make more money. Save money. Seal your windows. Save money on energy bills. Don't blame the gas company. All right, let's talk about spending for a bit anyways. Here, just another example. Daniel Faith says, use DuckDuckGo and forget about Google. Fair enough. See, that's the thing. As long as we have a competitive environment, that's the important thing. Have lots of providers. No matter what the industry or business is, you need multiple levels of provision. Then you're fine. So we're going to talk more about it at the pipeline. That show will be on tonight, but we're going to talk about the budget. I haven't talked too much Alberta stuff, but yeah, the budget came out yesterday. It's what you would expect. It's an election budget. We've got an election coming up in May, and the government has opened up the floodgates of spending. I understand why they're doing it. Doesn't mean I have to like it, but I understand why. Unfortunately, you know, we get so much decisions of try to pick the lesser of the evils with things. And it's a case of, well, I know she's spending like a mad woman or a premier, but it's better than Notley would be. And that's true. But man, I hate voting or choosing or having to be pushed into the lesser of the evils. And, you know, so either way, though, that what she has been doing, and it's infuriating the left, is she's unloading Rachel Notley's gun. When we're going into the election, what can Notley say? You didn't spend enough on this. And then the UCP can say, well, we just increased spending on this. Well, you're not spending enough on that. Well, actually, we just increased spending on that. So it's going to be very hard for Notley, because Notley's whole campaign basis is just spend, 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 spend. Well, it's already being spent. Taves added a balanced budget law. Whatever. You know, I appreciate it. And I still think the UCP are the better of the bunch. By all means, I do not want to see Notley in. But balanced budget laws, you know, the very first time I went to the legislature, in person to watch things, I was invited there by Paul Hinman. He was the lone MLA for the Alberta Alliance Party at that time. And Ed Stelmach wanted to go into deficit. You see, Ralph Klein had made a balanced budget law. He said, it's illegal. You have to balance the budget. Well, Stelmach didn't like that. He wanted to keep spending and go, you know, borrow money and live on the credit cards like we used to, which he did. And it wasn't until just recently that we balanced it again. But he had to repeal the law. So that's all it took. They went in with their majority. They sat just before they tabled the budget, quick motion, all the way around the House, won the vote, repealed the law. That's it. So I mean, a balanced budget law, guys, it's not worth the paper it's written on. It's gesturing, it's posturing. Fair enough. I'm okay with posturing. It's part of politics, but there's nothing to it, guys. There's nothing about it. And that's the way it goes. Another big issue, yeah, they're saying they're not going to be funding a provincial police force at this time. Now, I despise thinking that basically what the government has is a hidden agenda. And I like to think that Premier Smith is planning on kind of turning around and moving towards imposing that provincial police force to, ending the RCMP contract and all that good stuff once she gets a majority and is comfortable with it. Though it's not a very honest way to go about it, because she just doesn't want to fight that battle going into an election. But if you don't, I'll say this, Premier Smith, I doubt she watches, especially since I've interviewed her a number of times before. Who knows? If you're watching, remember what took down your predecessor. He promised a whole lot of stuff and he didn't deliver. And he got ripped out of his job. And don't think for a second that the UCP members won't rip you out of your job as well. And Daniel Smith has certainly learned the hard lesson of losing support from within your own party before. So be careful, because it was the bait and switch with the Fair Deal panel was a lot of what led to the end of Premier Kenney's career as Premier. So please, Premier Smith, be careful when you soft pedal or back pedal on some things that were pretty core items of the conservative philosophy that got you into the role that you're in today. I understand you can't go hell-bent for leather on a whole Alberta agenda platform going into a provincial election in a few months. But the day after that provincial election, you better not forget who brung you to the dance, because they will dump you in a heartbeat. We've seen that. How many conservative leaders? I think it's been listed. When's the last time a conservative leader has made it in Alberta through 2 elections? And it's not the voters who tend to kick them out. It's their own party members. So be careful. Be careful. Again, I understand why perhaps you're putting the back burner on the provincial police force, but it is a key element of things that we've been pushing for a long time, as well as the pension plan and other things. I'll leave off on a nasty note. A 31-year-old Toronto man is facing 100 charges in connection with luring and sexual assault of children. These stories are all too common, but the main one, if you want to look that one up, is he's been charged and released before. We got to start maybe making some of these judges room with the criminals and pedophiles and sex offenders and such. Just share a cell with them for a week. You think they're that safe? You want to release them among us, maybe you should put a little quality time in with them too. Have them babysit your kids, grandchildren. No, the kids don't deserve that. The bloody people in the justice system who keep letting these predatory, vicious, violent, child-destroying animals loose, though, we got to start holding them accountable, because this is enough. We're letting people out on bail. They're shooting police officers and they're raping kids. And I'm not talking in an exaggeration or figuratively. This guy's a child rapist. And he got let out, and we had him before. Either way, that's enough out of me, guys. The veins pulsing. Otherwise, hey, spring's approaching. The weather's nice. Oil prices are high. There's still a lot of positive things to look forward to, guys. I appreciate you tuning in with me today. I've got a guest coming next week. I can't say yet, but I think it might be really, really good. I'm working on that. I sure hope so. And otherwise, there's still going to be a good guest. Just might not be the one I'm thinking of. And of course, there'll be lots of other stuff to report on. Be sure to check out 7 o'clock tonight, The Pipeline. There'll be Nigel and Derek and I going on about a few more news items and stories. And of course, keep coming to the Western Standard for your source of information, guys. It's important to us and it's important to you. Thanks for tuning in. See you next week.